Good to see you, Sarb.
Good to see you, Crawford. Thanks for your time today.
Absolutely.
Folks, we are at IBM Think 2025, and Crawford and I are part of the Analyst Summit as well. What's your overall take, listening to IBM, but not only IBM, overall about the industry? Where are we in this transition to AI while keeping in mind all the legacy? How do you see it?
Yeah, so I think when you look at the overall industry, when it comes to AI, we're starting to get a handle on what I'll call the early horizontal use cases. These would be things like Copilot, these are things like Cloud, these are things like Gemini from Google, and we're starting to see those, and they're definitely been integrated into different productivity tools. Where we're just, if it was a baseball game, we're not even singing the national anthem yet. I mean, we're at the very, very early beginning of what I would call agentic systems. And these are agents, that can act autonomously on behalf of an end user, but also they can, because they're acting autonomously, they can make decisions and they can reason. And I think that we're just entering that era now. And we're seeing all of the excitement and hype and euphoria associated with the potential of this technology, because in certain use cases, I think they'll be amazing. But I think it's going to take us some time to figure out how we can really move them into B2B enterprise software. So when I say that, for example, it's very easy to visualize an agent that, Sarbjeet, if you wanted to fly to Paris, giving an agent the ability to book a ticket for you at a certain price while you sleep is fine. But being able to integrate it into B2B software and be able to really have a customer book a deal without any involvement, we're a long way from being able to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. The B2B software is pretty complex. There's so many touch points, so many APIs, so many integrations we do with different systems. Like if somebody needs to go on vacation, it has to touch the payroll system, it has to touch the systems where somebody needs to be notified, like somebody needs to pick up the Slack,
The HR system for vacation time, all those things.
All that stuff, yeah. So and then on top of that, let's put that aside. My main concern is that we are over-promising as vendors. Some vendors will say that, hey, 15% of the workloads are using digital workers now.
Right.
They can say that like by picking a smaller sample, if you will. The main question is that confusing the personas, developers, architects, database administrators, or anybody who does anything with the database. The DBAs are kind of dying breed, but other people are picking that role. So I think people are getting confused. Which tools should I pick? Which vendor I should go with? Because there are no standards yet, right? So as you said,
this is the wild, wild west of AI and of agentic systems, and that is that these silos, these systems are federated, right? And so Salesforce has a stack, and ServiceNow has a stack, and IBM has a stack, and Oracle has a stack, and everyone's going to want to bring their own agents out. Now, some companies are in very interesting situations. ServiceNow is a company that can connect many.
They're sitting on top.
Yeah, they're sitting on top, so they've got an opportunity to do some interesting stuff. But even then, the orchestrating of all these SaaS vendors' agents. Can you imagine being a SaaS company and not working on agents right now? I mean, it'd be a death sentence, right?
Yes.
So everyone's going to have their own agents. So how we start thinking about arbitrating those agents, making sure those agents have a standard language, making sure that a customer can easily connect those agents to achieve a specific use case that they've developed. This is all the hard work that we're just starting to do now. And that's going to be, I think, probably the toughest part about the next 2 years in agents, because there's going to be a lot of broken promises, there's going to be a lot of shattered dreams, there's going to be a lot of customers that also may not engage in agentic systems because they want to see all this worked out. Now, I do think there'll be a lot of pioneering customers who will jump in and who will be able to connect a few applications or maybe multiple applications, but they will only be able to do that by working deeply with the consulting companies and by spending a fair amount of their own resources to make those things work.
Definitely. There are always few customers who jump in and,
Yeah, sure.
and start playing with the newer technologies. And as you said, the complexity of agent orchestration is it's very cumbersome problem to solve.
Yeah.
Even within one vendor, if you have multiple agents, just like say Salesforce or IBM or Oracle, just you name a company, just orchestrating only their agents is hard. But when you take a look at the solution where the multiple vendors are, participating, then
it gets extremely
it's
complicated. And also, I would argue, it's not just about agent orchestration. Agent orchestration implies whatever the agent is doing makes sense in its own right. And now you're going to orchestrate, say, something like the sequence or the timing of what's going to happen. We need to do agent integration. We need to be able to break apart a specific workload where maybe data is coming out of different data stores that are associated with different applications or different SaaS platforms, and then be able to figure out how do we integrate that information in order to match the use case of a customer. So it's a complicated problem.
Yeah, and the security has to go your role-based access. Like who can do what. Like you can't have an agent which can get to all these systems, but then the person who's using the agent doesn't have access to get to those systems. So we have to pass through our security and protocols and all that stuff. How about the timing wise? So how long you think? So our job is to calm the nerves of some people. Right? That's all I say. Let's calm the nerves of some personas, like, hey, you are not behind. These things can take time. In your view, you guys do a lot of study and data at IDC. How long this transition will take, and then how long it will take to mature it further?
Yeah, so I think the maturity of agentic systems is going to take the next 3 years. We're going to be on that journey. And across that entire way, we're going to see pioneering companies that are being extremely innovative and also extremely progressive in how they communicate about things like how do leaders talk to employees about the role of AI and how AI is going to augment people's skills so people don't get really, really upset about potential layoffs or potential job elimination. How are IT departments going to make sure that they have a very, very targeted set of POCs, and those POCs have workable milestones that can deliver value to the organization? I think we're in that now. Yeah. We're just getting into that now, and I think that over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see significant progress. I think it's an incredibly exciting time because we're all going to learn together in this. And I think that people really don't have a lot to worry. The companies I think that have a lot to worry about are the companies, it's not different than consumer AI, where the people who weren't figuring out how to work with consumer AI, weren't figuring out how to prompt, weren't figuring out how to interact with these tools, those people will be left behind. Yeah. Well, as a company, you can't afford to be left behind. You must be experimenting today. So where do you experiment? You experiment with, I would call, the low stakes, high value kinds of applications. Maybe some of those applications are internally focused, where if there's a mistake, it's going to be very, very evident to a worker right away, and that worker can take appropriate action. You probably don't want to move right to the customer facing stuff. You want to have somebody who's, as they say, in the loop, who's able to arbitrate on some of those decisions. But I think we will fairly quickly establish some standards in this industry, and I think it's going to look like I think the next 3 years are going to be super exciting. I think next year we'll see more standards emerge. I think the year after, after that we'll start to see more and more vertical use cases, yes. And I think we'll see fairly significant adoption. Like I said, over that 3-year period.
Yeah, actually, from the persona side, I think the personas have to be also calm enough that, hey, you start learning about these newer standards, newer ways of doing things. Play with it in your own. You can do personal use case if your company is not doing that yet. So you can play it like
or internally focused stuff. I mean, you know, again, so what's a role that has been transformed by AI so far? Customer service, right? Maybe you go to customer service and say, maybe I'm going to develop a few agents to try to push the window a little bit further, but still I've got a human in the loop. I've got a human who's arbitrating and able to make decisions on the data that's coming back from the agent.
Yeah, there's another term coming now in talks, that human in the loop versus human on the loop. So we're like in the loop means like there's a sequence of events which needs to happen, and agents are taking care of it. But there's one part is done by human in that chain. But on the loop is where this is automated, all this chain, but human is taking a look at that if it's doing the right thing, or sort of agents are doing the right thing or not.
Whether agents are doing the right thing or not, and I think humans are I think it's going to be a while before humans are not arbitrating, are not making sure those decisions are being the right decisions are being made.
No, I agree. So about the we had some discussions here about the margins, you know, of the consulting divisions of the companies. Like IBM has a big consulting division, and other companies have smaller sort of consulting divisions, or they use third-party SIs. So their SI's margin will improve. We are hearing, because we will need fewer number of people to do the job.
I think there's a number of aspects to it. I think one is that they may be able to do the work with fewer people. Another is that the amount of throughput that the company may be able to take on goes up, which is another way of saying you're doing more work with the same or a similar amount of people. So you may get a significant amount of scale, and therefore you're going to get increased margins in the business. That's in a perfect world. I think the reality, though, of the situation is that, like all markets, somebody will blink, right? So it'd be a perfect world if you could all of a sudden charge the same amount of money, have significant throughput, or, to your point, execute that work with less cost. But unfortunately, it's a competitive marketplace, and somebody's going to come in and say, hey, guess what, Mr. or Ms. Customer, I'll give some of that back to you. And so they'll give some of that back. And so if they end up giving some of that back, then what ends up happening is the economic forces of gravity come down, and then you start giving some of that margin, probably a significant part of that margin, back to the customer. So then what you start to say is, okay, that's fine, but have I changed the economics of the business? Can I now operate what was a very, very human-intensive business with a term we've heard a lot this week, digital workers? And can these digital workers now work like little worker bees to be able to scale what was a very human-based business?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the discussions around that. Some companies are trying to price these digital workers on per hour basis. This is piece of software you are charging per hour, and they're experimenting with that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be very difficult to go in and say, I've got a worker named Crawford, I've got a worker named Sarbjeet, and I've got 500 digital workers, and I'm going to somehow come up with a comparative way to charge for those people. I think at the end of the day, the digital workers are going to get priced in, and by the way, there is no great model for this today, but they're going to get priced in a way that looks more like software going forward. And I think it's going to be a capability play that's going to be tied to a combination of human labor and software being deployed.
Yeah. I think the margin compression will happen because that's how the market works. But also the TAM will increase. I think as we can do more stuff, we will do more stuff, right?
So well said, Sarbjeet. I mean, that is the promise of generative AI and of agents, which is that people will stand on the shoulders of this technology and achieve heights that metaphorically, never achieved before. And that will happen over and over and over again. And now, we can have a whole conversation about job elimination versus job augmentation versus new job creation, which is where I think we're going. But I think that's really at the core of the issue, right? Which is how does this affect business models and the way people work? And I think it's very clear that we are headed into a new world. And the people that are focused on more of those rote tasks, particularly in jobs that are a very narrow number of rote tasks, are significantly vulnerable. And I think that because what the research shows over and over is that once a machine takes over a rote task, the human can never catch the machine.
Yeah.
The machine only gets better and better and better. So a human needs to focus on those more complicated tasks.
Another actually thing what comes to my mind is that there are some companies which own sort of business processes in their software. Actually, they have honed that art. Like likes of SAP, likes of Oracle. They have Oracle Financials. Workday is another example. You know, like ServiceNow is. They have a lot of sort of moat. I mean, what I'm trying to talk about is the moat. Are there companies which have moat which will be transferred to the AI world?
Yeah, so I think there are, right? I think many SaaS companies or software companies, however, whatever their model is, do have significant moat, and those moats are tied to what I'll call the enterprise repetitive muscles that have been developed in organizations.
True.
And, we've always done it this way in human resources. We've always done it this way in finance. We've always done it this way in sales. And I think that the ability of a company to develop new muscles and change its muscles, unless it's a very, very, very desperate situation, is hard to do.
Yes,
it's hard to get people to change. And so I do think that those represent moats. They represent behavior. They represent behavioral moats, and they represent process moats, which maybe is the same thing within an organization. Which is why I think it's easy. And we had a great conversation yesterday with Rob Thomas about this. It's easy to look at the SaaS world and say, oh, agents are going to destroy the SaaS market. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think agents will destroy the SaaS market, but I do think agents will start to change customers' relationship with the SaaS markets. Yes. They will start to change the way customers think about the work they're getting done today within an HR app versus across an HR and a finance app, for example. And I think it will allow customers to do more sophisticated things. And you might even see, and this is where I think ServiceNow is onto something, you might even see a new class of software companies start to emerge that connect these data sets in new ways.
Yeah.
In order to help companies develop new muscles that frankly drive greater levels of productivity.
Yeah, it changes the middleware, it changes the infrastructure to start with, then middleware. It actually, AI is impacting all layers of the stack, if you will. In many ways, this move into the AI and Gen AI space for all personas, it looks like how we moved from client-server world to mobile, social, and internet-based applications. Yeah. But it seems like it's a bigger change. Is it because of the sort of whole narrative is so like loud and high, or? Yeah,
the narrative is certainly loud. The narrative is certainly loud and high, but I would say, and by the way, Sarbjeet, I 100% agree with you. This is a new era that we're entering into, and you can pinpoint the date. You know, it was November of 2022 that we had our AI moment when ChatGPT burst onto the scene, and now we've seen so many different iterations, and we're building upon that technology. But I've never seen a technology move faster that, from our recommendation standpoint, we're saying to customers, you need to look at this technology, you need to test this technology, and you need to figure out a strategy for how you're going to work with this technology. I mean, think about all of the years that we fiddled around with the Palm Pilot and with the Pocket PC and with all these things before we got Android and iPhone, right?
Yeah.
And again, a lot of things came together. Connectivity came together, cloud came together, and of course that exploded into mobile apps. But I think this technology it's the pace that it's moving that's different, and the pace is moving incredibly quickly. And I would say it is not only the beginning of a new era, but I think that this era is probably going to move faster than any of the eras we've seen before. I'm super excited about it.
It's very exciting, actually. I think it will suffice to say that it's the iPhone moment of the software stack.
I think it's the iPhone moment of intelligent software.
Cool. Thanks, Crawford, for your time today.
Always. So great
it's
to
always
see
a
you.
pleasure to see you
Yeah.
and compare some notes and be with the fellow analysts. And you guys are the role models. Thank you.
Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Good.
Thanks.
That was good. Yeah, good to see you. So I'm going to run up to the keynote.
Okay.
We'll let you take care of this.
All right.
But if I don't